welcome back to a Reusable Space Program. We're on episode 18, and we're on a journey across the surface of Mun. That's right. Gwyn and Isaac have landed. They've done a little bit of science where they landed. They checked out the ore amount, and now they're going for a little drive because they want to check the area. And we're basically going to be driving all around this little big crater to see what happens. So we better get something to put there, hadn't we? Right, so because we're now on Mun and we're investigating where we can actually go mining, we're going to need some stuff to do the mining. So we're going to start bringing up some machinery and some habitation equipment. But first, as our sort of communication has improved around Mun, we're going to actually send up another cargo craft. This is going to be Cargo 2, and the big difference with Cargo 2 is, it doesn't have anywhere for a Kerbal to sit. It's completely automated. So like I mentioned in the last episode, we're not going to be putting Kerbals on every craft. I think that's a series for another day maybe. But this one is, you can see we've replaced the cargo container for the crew with another fuel tank. And that's going to allow us to hopefully carry further and for heavier items which require more fuel for landing. So that's going to sit in orbit, and then we're going to have to probably bring up some other stuff to attach to it and then take it out to the Mun. But what's that going to be? We'll have to see. What I won't do is actually show you all of the landings and taking off and launches that we're going to do in this episode or in the next one. The next one, this one has quite a bit of stuff going on. The next one is chaotic because, yes, I have actually recorded these at the same time. This one and the next one sort of hit together, and it's quite staggering. So this craft does its burn down and everything. So on the surface, you can see our scientist and engineer have found themselves a giant moon rock. Well, we better have an investigation. Okay, a little bit of speedy turn. And what we have learned is the rover is not that stable. And put the brakes on, people. I hope we're okay. Yeah. Oh dear. So we're taking off now in a launch with another Wide Boy X5. And this is going to be a start of our program to basically try and get some material onto the Mun's surface. We need to send up quite a few components, but before we can do any of that, we need to actually figure out what we're sending up. So we're going to be sending up, first of all, a component which is really important. This is one of our core components, and it's going to be a converter. So the converter is going to be there so that we can actually take any ores, anything we mine, and convert it into fuel, so liquid fuel, RCS, oxidizer, anything like that. And this is part of the stock system. Now, I've not used this at all previously. Last time I used an in situ resource system or anything like that, it was probably what was it, Keithin with its old scanning system, which I loved. It was really cool. So this is a new sort of departation for me. Departation, I don't even think that's a word, but we're going to say it anyway. So we're going to put this into orbit, and what we're going to try and do is rendezvous with that Cargo 2 craft. The main reason being that this doesn't have any sort of RCS, any controls on it doing anything. It is literally a very heavy converter unit, and I can't remember the actual mass of it, but it's just bulky. It's just really heavy. It and other components of this are very heavy because partly I think probably game balance, they're designed to do that, but also in what they actually do practically, it takes a lot of size. Now, we could have gone for a smaller version of this, just changing the plane there so that we bring ourselves into the same plane as the Cargo 2 craft. I could have put a smaller unit on, but they're less efficient, and in my mind, starting out, if we're going to be on the surface anyway, we might as well put something big down there. It does have some very small wheels, so we can move it around. It has some legs as well, so we can actually fix it in place. I'm not sure if we're going to use all of those, because we end up with a craft with lots of legs if this goes on the way it's hopefully going to go. The base I'm building is going to be quite modular, so we will be able to actually pick it up, move it around, things like that. However, I'm going to try and keep that to a minimum. I was tempted to build a little craft for actually just assembling these things on the surface. So drop them down, don't have any wheels on them, and have something that comes and moves them. We didn't actually have the wheel tech to do that though, and we're not at that point yet. So I want to try and get this going. If we develop other bases, that's probably the way I will go though, because then we can actually they're very much modular. We can use them in orbit, we can use them everywhere without extra components and parts stuck to them, and keeps the part count down quite nicely, because all these extra wheels and batteries and things, they add up. So we're just getting into an orbit there that's going to intersect. We've done our a retrograde burn so that we're actually dropping our orbit down, hopefully into the same path as the cargo craft. You can see we're actually just slowing down now, so the orbit's now dropping. And we're going to try and do an orbital rendezvous of this with the cargo craft. It is a big thing. The cargo craft is unmanned, so hopefully our communication system is going to work on this one. If we have a problem with it, it's going to show it up very quickly. A lot of this episode and the next one is docking, if I haven't already mentioned it. And you can, particularly on this one, I was messing around with actually just how close I can get in a rendezvous situation. So you see here we're coming in, and the burns, I'm trying to minimize the number of burns I do. Now this is not like in real life. You would not be as aggressive in actual fact in real life. And particularly you see here we're doing our burns. You would be allowed to do this in real life, but burning once we've gone past the target would not be allowed. So now I wouldn't really be allowed to burn. It's sort of frowned upon to burn towards any space station or anything, because you're actually firing material back out at it. So you also wouldn't approach at speed and then turn around, because if your engines fail or you have an engine problem, all of a sudden you are going to hit something. And that's a bit like, I think, what happened to Mia, although in Mia's situation, the impact was actually due to them trying out a new docking program type situation, automated docking system or something like that. Go and look it up. It's actually quite interesting. Mia always gets, I think, overlooked now, but I think it was a landmark that, it's quite fitting that part of Mia 2 is now part of the International Space Station in my mind. So there we go. There's our little converter. It's massive. And our robotic craft, you see, it does the funny thing that I mentioned in the last episode, where these joints seem to de-lock themselves when you go away from a craft and you have to reactivate them. So pull away our solar panels, because we know that putting solar panels near other things is often a very bad idea, and we're just going to pop this onto the end docking port there, because we're going to dock, and we're going to wait, because we're going to add some more things to this craft before we depart. This carrier has got a lot of fuel potential in it, so we can take quite a big weight into orbit around Moon. Anyway, let's get back to the surface. So yeah, our boys are continuing their journey. They've avoided one big rock and they're speeding along now. And this journey just took a long time, and it was the sort of thing you just do in the background. I think if I had a mod for like a rover controller or something, that'd be really cool to have. But this was quite interesting, because the surface of Moon is definitely changed since I was last there. Anyway, leaving them on their journey, we better get back to another launch. So we have sent up our converter. Well, what do we need as well as the converter? We need some drills, because if we don't have any drills, we have got nothing to convert, and that would be a problem. So one of the big points to note is most of these craft actually have built into them little ore storage units. So we're gonna store the ore once we've drilled it. Even if we convert it, can't do anything with it if we've got no power or anything. So that's good. We can actually get going. And this was just a standard launch into orbit, again using the X5 Y-Boy, and it's pretty much the same craft that we sent up with the last thing. So we're just basically reusing our craft now. And I'm not going to show you them landing down, but yeah, they parachute down. You've seen it before in previous episodes. And this was a really nice little flight. We take it up to about 150 kilometers. It's interesting that Kerbals have a completely sort of different scale world, but they still use the same measurement system that we do. Anybody who thought that's a bit odd? You'd have thought that, at least it's not inches, but I suppose if you're American, they use a different measuring system. Anyway. So the rendezvous, we used to prep that up, and we do the sort of standard wiggly wiggle move forward in the orbit a few times. I will say the move your node forward in orbit and back in orbit is a brilliant tool that I actually underestimated the first time I saw its availability. It didn't used to be in the game. Kudos to the introduction of that, because it particularly for rendezvous like this, it is just a lifesaver. So off we go, do our burn, get ourselves ready, and we're just going to come in. And this is a nice quick approach, actually, a bit too quick, so we slow down as we almost miss. And again, this craft has not got anything sort of orientating it, and so yeah, well, that's right, we helpfully set it on a spinning motion, but luckily time warping stabilizes it. Obviously, yes, real life that wouldn't happen, it would keep spinning, but then equally we'd probably put some sort of RCS or a reaction wheel on it if we were really that concerned. So probably in future I'd probably put a reaction wheel. The probe code that's on board, it does have some degree of reaction wheel, but it's very limited, so yeah. And so this one is going to go onto the top docking port of our craft. So we're going to have them on either end of the craft, and I've done this because I want to try and keep the craft reasonably balanced, because we have not yet finished with our docking processes and what we're actually going to be taking to Mun. So we've got our converter, we're going to have our drill, and the next component is vitally required as well. In fact, there's going to be quite a few components, but for this train, shall we call it, we should call it a Muna train of sorts. That will be pretty much what we need. And so there we go, we've got our two big chunky components on. Now let's go back to the surface again. Yeah, so the boys have they've had a little stop, they've had a little check, they've got a little bit of science, so they're going to put the legs down, have a little rest, because they've been driving a long time, and you can see in the distance there is a mountain that they'll probably have to go up, so they're going to get up some rest before they do that. Anyway, while they're lazing around, let's go get on. So next craft going up, this is our fuel tanking. Yeah, so you can see instead of using the big round ones that we'll be putting in orbit, I've actually used a cluster of 4 of those liquid fuel tanks, primarily just because I wanted to try using them, and also they fit the sort of shape and design that we're going for. In an ideal world, I will probably in time send up some really big tanks with this sort of structure design, but at the moment I'm not too worried about it. I think we're about to unlock the larger docking ports, and that will bring with it some opportunities. However, you know, we've got to be a bit careful about where we use them because of compatibility with different docking ports, things like that. I think some people you used to be able to actually nestle your docking ports together, and that would be an idea. We could actually build like multifunctional docking ports. It would be nice if they were possible, or if they existed. I don't know if there's a mod for that, and I don't know if there is one, if I would use it. But anyway, we put ourselves into our standard sort of higher orbit, and then we start just playing around with the maneuver nodes again, and it is just docking. It's just lots of docking, because you know it takes a lot of on-orbit maneuvers to build a reusable space program. Unfortunately, that's what this is going to be about. It's going to be, you know, using every resource. These things, I could send this up in one craft and just take the whole thing there, but you know what, I'd have to throw off stages left, right and center to do it, and we can't do that because we've got to be 100% reusable. So in effect, we've pretty much used 3 parts of craft to launch all of these. This wide boy has been used for every single one. Its first stage has been used for every single one. It's the same stage over and over again. It's got parachutes, it's bringing it down. So we're basically just reusing it. If you like SpaceX, we've basically reused our booster stage, what, 4 or 5 times here? So here we are, we're going to come in, and again, just like the last one, we do not have any sort of RCS control on this. Now we do have RCS on it because it is a fuel tank, obviously, so it's got RCS sort of fuel on there, but yeah, we didn't put any RCS nozzles on because we don't need them. And then we have a bit of a problem getting it out. Yeah, we had a bit of a glitch there. I was actually terrified we were going to break another thing there. So yeah, note to self, be careful when swinging things around in space. So this time we're actually going to you can see that, oh, it has got RCS ports. I tell a lie. But they don't stay active for very long, and it's now drifting again. So yeah, that's the problem. The probe core that's in there is not the best in the world, shall we say. So it's firing off vast amounts of RCS. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our docking craft, and we're just going to rotate it round, and yeah, we're doing old school sort of anti-normal and normal approach there. You can actually just watch them. I'm just watching it myself, thinking, well, you know, this is quite interesting. I could have actually just forced the process. I've obviously learned not to force these dockings, so you can actually see that top drill component isn't on straight, but that shouldn't matter because it's balanced if nothing else. So there we go. We're just going to dock this up nice and carefully. There we go. Now the good thing is that we can actually make sure that all of the fuel on this system, there we go, unlock all of these tanks, and we're going to make sure that all of this fuel is actually pumped towards our engines, and that's really important because we're going to need this fuel, because this is quite a heavy craft that we're going to take there. It's a lot of bits. We got 3 very heavy components. The fuel tanks when empty aren't too bad, but they currently got fuel in them. We're also going to want to dump the fuel out of them because it just makes landing them later a lot easier as well. So you can see they've all got this standard end on each of the components, and this is so that they can dock on the surface together nice and easily. Probably over-engineered it, but you know, I like the ability that we can actually move them around and stuff, and we can restructure them. So back on the surface, the boys are having a little snoozle, they're having a little sleep. We don't want to disturb them. It is the day there, but then the days on the Mun are different to days on Kerbin, so they're still acclimatizing. So next thing we have to do is actually fuel this whole thing up. So we sent up this tanker, and you can see this tanker, I think we've probably used it before, but this tanker is pretty much the X5, but instead of the cargo bay, we've just put a big fuel tank on board. We empty the fuel tank of oxidizer and just send up fuel because it just fits the form factor. It'd be nice if you could have standard parts that were this size for liquid fuel. I could use space plane parts. We've just about unlocked them, I think, but they are odd shape, and so I decided just to go with this. So what we've done is basically taken that craft and just strapped on a big fuel tank instead, and it's a really easy little addition. And this craft will literally just be delivering fuel up to the into orbit and then taking itself back down. It's not going to go anywhere else. It's not got communication to go anywhere else. If we want to do any transport, you know, outside of Kerbin's sphere of influence, I would not be using that big chunky engine. I would use a nuclear engine, so we'll have to invest in that in the future. Okay, that fuel tanker will take itself back down out of orbit, and as it does, we're going to send off our little Mooner train off towards the Mun. So it's going to join all of the other stuff that we've sent there. We're going to start to get quite a good critical mass of material around the Mun, and this is important. We need to get a mass of people, a mass of machinery, a mass of equipment there, so we can start to develop that infrastructure to get the fuel, to start delivering the fuel. So we're going to need, in the next few episodes, we're going to need to add some more components to this sort of train, these trains that are going to the Mun, because we're going to need to have things to support this mining operation. We need power for one thing. We're going to need some crew down there, so we're going to need some living quarters. Then we're also going to need some craft for transporting the fuel around. So we're going to need to take it from the surface up into orbit. We're going to need to take it from that orbit to wherever it needs to go, because we may not be launching our craft from Mun. We may want to launch all of our craft from Kerbin, for example, because it might be easier for us to just assemble around Kerbin. We're also going to need to do a lot of just sort of general moving around of crew and machinery, and we're going to have to start practicing, because I want to go to Duna, I want to go to some other planets, and to do that, we're going to have to actually practice, and I think that's what we're going to use Minmus for. So, as we travel off towards the Mun, I'm going to say that's it for now. Until next week, have a great one.